Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Steele, and on behalf of all my fellow Aspen Institute trustees, it's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening, where we're all really honored and excited to be part of the 2015 McNulty Prize recognition. It's terrific to all be here together, and it's really a wonderful night in the arc of the Aspen Institute year. To have this as part of our regular cycle is a fantastic highlight for all of us. As all of you know, the McNulty Prize recognizes the Aspen Global Leadership Network Fellows, who all of them in their own way are doing their best to attack and address some of the foremost social, economic, and environmental challenges of our time. One of the real great things about the Aspen Global Leadership Network is that birthed out of the Henry Crown Fellowship was the idea of a project or of an application or thinking about how to develop a specific strategy with regard to engaging with society, and the project has been a great tool for that. The Aspen Global Leadership Network includes more than 2,000 fellows from 49 different countries, so being selected for this award is a remarkable achievement, and it says a bit about the competition that there's so many talented people who are in the field doing things. As was announced previously, the McNulty Prize this year is awarded to B-Lab, which is co-founded by Aspen Institute Henry Crown Fellows J. Coen Gilbert and Andrew Kassoy and Bart Houlahan. Join me in congratulating them officially at this time. It certainly seems to me fitting that B-Lab is receiving this award, which was created to honor the legacy of my friend and partner at Goldman Sachs for several decades, John P. McNulty. B-Lab is a global movement of people using business and business skills as a force for good. I can just close my eyes and imagine that John would appreciate and recognize that this really fits directly into some of the things that he thought about and were in his mind as he really thought about the idea of applying tools and skills, not just in one direction to business, but in other areas too. And when John talked about philanthropy or other interests, you could see his mind whirring in a way that would be thinking about how to do it in just this way. So let me just say that it's my pleasure to say on behalf of all of the Aspen Institute how grateful we all are to the McNulty family for continuing to honor John's legacy by investing in leaders who use their talents and gifts to try to make a significant impact on the world around us. So let me just say again, congratulations to the winners. Thanks all of you for being here, and thanks to the McNulty family for creating this method by which we can recognize an important part of the Aspen Institute in a very great way. Thank you very much, and let me invite Ann to come to the stage. Ann?
Thank you, Bob, for that wonderful introduction. This is always such a happy evening for us. We're happy to celebrate it with you, and it really is a kind of family and friends event in a very special way. John's brother and sisters are here. My sisters are here. Many of John's friends, trustees of the Aspen Institute, and many friends of the Aspen Institute. This year, some of my classmates from Harvard are here as well. There's one person who's not here, and that is April Aj. April, as you know, is the head of our foundation, and April really drives the whole deliberation process for the McNulty Prize. She is not here for the excellent reason that she delivered her baby 2 days ago. So we were trying to time it delivery tomorrow, but we couldn't get it that exactly. And in typical deliberative style that April has, she has not yet picked a name for the baby. So anyone who wants to email her with suggestions. So now, since the announcement of the prize laureates last summer in Aspen, I've been thinking a lot about all that the prize means to me and all that the prize means to my children, Johnny, Bryn, and Kevin. And I thought I would tell again one of my favorite stories about John when he was building a business against all odds. And this story was told in the book called The Partnership, voila, the book about Goldman Sachs. The author, Charlie Ellis, quotes a speech that John would give in the early days when he was really trying to build and expand what would become an incredibly successful asset management business. But so I would like to read you that part from the book. It says, quote, an expert observer of firm politics, McNulty viewed his career with engagingly sardonic good humor. This may be our last job at the firm, McNulty warned his team. We are pioneers. And you know what pioneers do. They come up with the ideas, they blaze the paths, they take all the big risks. And years later, people build statues to honor what the pioneers did. The pioneers that nobody can remember by name. And then the pigeons come and shit all over them. So he said to his team, that's our destiny, pigeon shit. Now, I love this story because it shows at the same time that he was giving the message to his team, we are going to do great things together, and it doesn't really matter if nobody later remembers our name. So those of you who know John may have known that story, and his family and friends who are here will recognize this potent combination of ambition and humor, sense of destiny, and actually humility. So he would, by the virtue of his drive, be a pioneer and would, with the help of many, many others, succeed. So to honor John, we created the McNulty Prize. And this evening and the past years, we really look to celebrate the courageous pioneers among us. At the Aspen Institute, we talk a lot about how do you move the needle to solve intractable problems. How do we translate ideas into action? How can we really make a difference? So one way, of course, is by being pioneers ourselves. And tonight, we have the chance to learn from some of the most amazing, courageous pioneers in our midst tonight, who have made a difference, who have identified problems and taken actions in a way that really changes the system. So tonight, we celebrate our 8th winner of the John P. McNulty Prize. This amazing trio of fellows from B-Lab, who really are changing the very definition of business and the ability of business to do good. We are also happy to have with us some of the other stars from our McNulty Prize laureate family. Rosanna Woodruff. Rosanna, where are you? Voila. Rosanna is last year's winner. Rosanna inspired us with her courage and really true pioneer spirit when she moved to a rural South African village to help those communities change their infrastructure, their health, their education, create sources of income, all the while carefully adhering to the traditional structures. We also have Jordan Kassoy, our inaugural winner. Jordan is a New York City ophthalmologist. He actually treats Madeleine Albright among his other clients. And he crafted a new way to deliver reading glasses to those parts of the world where people did not have access to reading glasses. You know, parts like Central America, Rwanda, Bangladesh, and many others. And at this time, he has delivered more than 2.5 million pairs of glasses. Through Vision Spring. Our second winner, who is not here tonight, but I definitely have to give him a shout out, is Patrick Awawa, who founded a liberal arts university in Ghana. It's called Asesi University. And Patrick, as many of you know, but those of you who don't know will be delighted to hear, Patrick was just named one of the 25 MacArthur Genius Awards. Naturally, we take credit for having recognized Patrick's talent and initiative back in 2008 and setting him on this path towards this Genius Award. We have two other McNulty Prize winners in the room with us tonight. Dele Olajede. Yeah, now you may well remember that Dele was a moderator here on this very stage last year, so Walter will have to step up the game to be as good as Dele last year. Dele was the first African to win the Pulitzer Prize for journalism for his coverage of the Rwandan genocide. And he made the decision to leave his good life here in New York as a journalist and go back to Nigeria to investigate and publish reports of corruption there. And lastly, we have Bill Bynum. There's Bill. Now, Bill has really been at the forefront of what we now recognize as a key civil rights issue of our era, which is providing financial access to the poor. And he has successfully done that through Hope Credit Union in one of the poorest areas of the country, the Mississippi Delta, and the power of offering credit to enable people to start businesses, to expand businesses. There's unbelievably effective economic power in that. And so Hope Credit Union has done that, has expanded its reach, especially since Hurricane Katrina. So our thanks to all of you, current and past laureates. We are very excited to have an ever-expanding group of McNulty Prize laureates. So thanks so much. It's very exciting. Okay, so now we wanted to go ahead and introduce the video which we have about this year's laureates.
I think making positive change is an imperative for me. It's what drives me, and I think it is my life's work.
I can't imagine a higher calling than trying to figure out how to preserve our future source of economy and culture while making sure people can feed their kids today.
For me, it's much more than a job, than an initiative or a project. It's my goal.
Leadership is a vital ingredient for positive change, and I think the McNulty Prize affirms and rewards and encourages people to stand up and be counted as leaders.
We're proving that we can change the way fishermen fish, repopulate fish stocks, put food on the table, and boost local economies. The question was, could we inspire whole countries to change the way they fish or the way they farm? That's the inspiration for Fish Forever.
NutriVida is using the tools of the market to get good quality food to every single table. We want to eradicate undernutrition in the region.
I think that a society is unsustainable when half its youth aren't in productive economy. Harambee transitions young unemployed South Africans into their first jobs. What young people want most is a job, and the reason is that it gives them the autonomy and the agency to shape their own lives and realize their own potential.
We all have the capacity to do something so much more meaningful than simply run our businesses.
When you realize that you have the capacity through your network, through the skills you have in your organization, how can you not put everything you have into it?
We sometimes underestimate how many resources and what a big platform we have to affect change.
We've been given great gifts. The question is how we're going to use them now.
If we don't do this, we're not sure anyone else will.
Hello, I'm Johnny McNulty, and it's a real honor for me to be here celebrating these exceptional individuals from across the globe. This year's laureates are, as always, particularly impressive individuals. Finance, strategy, and media executive and founder of Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, Nicola Golombek, could not be here tonight, but let's applaud her for her success in bridging the skills gap for unemployed youth in South Africa by providing them with training and job placements, and by collaborating with industry and government to promote inclusive employment and to take risks to match people without traditional training who want to work with companies that need those workers. Conservationist and business professional and founder of Fish Forever, Brett Jenks is addressing the global fishing crisis by empowering local communities across the world to manage, protect, and exclusively harvest the resources they depend on to ensure that people and nature thrive for generations to come. Brett, if you could stand up, I'm sorry. And by employing her food industry and engineering expertise, Gisela Sanchez, founder of Nutravita, is spearheading an innovative effort to eliminate malnutrition for children and communities in Costa Rica by providing affordable access to nutritious, fortified food products in partnership with local saleswomen, NGOs, and major superstores. Gisela? Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Bryn, and it is my pleasure to introduce the winner of the 8th annual John P. McNulty Prize. As my brother and mom said, it is really so much fun for us to be back again. It's, as I said last year, hard for my brothers and I to believe we're part of something that is so powerful and so magnificent and seems to be growing in its influence every year. So we feel lucky to be kind of on the sidelines of the innovative work that everyone's doing around the world. So thank you for letting us be a part of it. As a student now at business school, I'm challenged every day to think about the way that I can make my impact on the world, how I can contribute to society. Traditionally, the business school lens is one focused on economic value, how we really focus on efficiency and making the world a more productive place. Now, we spend a lot more time talking about the concept of the triple bottom line: people, profit, planet. But it kind of seems like it's a great idea, but it never really works. Companies find that something always has to give, and it's never going to be profit. However, B-Lab really has changed that. They've found a way to make this business model work and make the model sustainable. They've developed a completely new lens. I'm especially delighted to honor entrepreneurs Coen Gilbert, Andrew Kassoy, and Bart Houlahan. Jay, Andrew, and Bart all left their successful private sector careers to form B-Lab with the great ambition that they could change corporate culture to be inclusive of all stakeholders. B-Lab is the architect behind the B Corporation and the growing movement of over 35,000 businesses who are using B-Lab's tools and frameworks to run their businesses and truly create value for profit, for people, and for the planet. Now, let's hear directly from B-Lab and from B Corps around the world to learn more about what the movement is all about.
If we're going to try to tackle the world's greatest challenges, we're going to have to harness the power of the single greatest man-made force that's ever been created, which is business.
I put together this idea that I wanted to be very successful in business. But I also wanted to have a culture where people really wanted to come to work, they respected the business, they wanted to stay for a long time. Strong cultures build strong businesses.
For-profit companies are so good at getting the best talent, using marketing, growing a lot. So it was a fantastic tool, but it was not necessarily pointing in the proper direction.
One consequence of an economy that's based upon the single rule of maximizing shareholder value is that the rules of the game drive us to depress wages, to externalize costs that create environmental harm and social dislocation. What we're seeing arise from entrepreneurs and investors all around the world is tapping into their latent desire to be of service and to use their businesses as more than just a tool to make money, but also to make a difference in the world. B-Lab was created by 3 college buddies who were all transitioning from a first career in business as entrepreneur, operator, and investor, and ready for the next phase of our career focused on impact. B-Lab and the B Corp community have built a set of tools that now tens of thousands of businesses around the world are using to help measure and manage their impact with as much care and rigor as they do their profits.
In Trustee, we dream about a society without waste. We invented a market-based way to increase the level of recycling, mainly in countries where you have no laws and lack of culture in terms of recycling. For me, it's totally obvious that society and consumers will keep on rewarding companies that are committed to solving social and environmental problems.
The best business leaders through time have considered more than their financial bottom line and more than the next quarter. And in a way, the B Corp movement is a return to that notion of business stewardship.
Trying to figure out how to not only do well in business, but do well in supporting social and environmental issues is really just another complex problem that, as an engineer, I love trying to figure out.
Through the concept of the B Corporation and through the B Impact Assessment and through the movement, we have learned amazing things through transparency, through governance, through labor practices, through environmental practices. You're joining a group of companies working in many different industries, doing fantastic things, and together we're changing the world.
Congratulations to B-Lab. Thank you. Bart J. and I were reflecting today on that first experience that we each had in our Crown Fellowships. I can remember walking into my first session in August 2001, just a few weeks before 9/11. I remember that uncomfortable feeling of looking around the room and feeling like I had no business being there.
an experience that many Crown Fellows and many members of the Aspen Global Leadership Network have had. We are, each of us, deeply, deeply grateful for having been in that uncomfortable position, and for all that experience did to nurture each of us individually and to nurture the B-Corp movement from its beginning. For each of us, the Crown Fellowship and the larger AGLN came at a critical inflection point in our lives. For me, it was a personal gift, one that would change the course of my life, first creating an opportunity for reflection, and then demanding of me a commitment to action. But the fellowship hasn't just been a personal gift. The AGLN at its very best is about collaborative leadership. The systemic challenges that we face as a society today are too complex to be addressed by a single charismatic hero, by the sole leader, the sole entrepreneur. And that idea is rooted in the very founding of B-Lab. B-Lab was founded by 3 people. Now 53 people are there, all of whom know that we can go further if we go together. That same lesson applies even more powerfully to the B-Corp movement as a whole. We are so grateful that over 30 AGLN fellows have played pioneering roles in building the B-Corp movement as entrepreneurs, as policymakers, as investors. There would not be a B-Corp movement if it weren't for the AGLN and for the Aspen Institute's role in leading a debate about the role of business in society. Finally, and most importantly tonight, Anne, thank you. Thank you to you, thank you to your children and your family, and thank you to your foundation team for creating this prize in John's honor. My guess is he would have appreciated this more than a statue covered in pigeon shit. As a very young associate at Goldman Sachs a long time ago, I actually got just a little bit of investment committee exposure to John's pioneering leadership and to his commitment to action. And I feel really grateful just for having had that little bit of time with him. And so we're looking around tonight, looking around the room and feeling that exact same uncomfortable feeling that we felt all those years ago when we became Crown Fellows. That sense when we look at the previous winners of the McNulty Award, when we look at tonight's laureates and say, how can we possibly be in this room? We don't belong here. We are both humbled and overwhelmed with gratitude to be in the same room with all of you, not to mention standing here to accept this prize. Thank you.
Let me invite them all up, if I may. Dan, yeah, Jay, Andy. And I think we'll move this podium because Dele got a chair last year. So I'm hoping to get a chair of my own and have a bit of a conversation. And, yeah.
Should we help move this?
No, I think there's all sorts of gentlemen coming here. Don't you get some medals? Aren't we supposed to give them something, Johnny? Oh, okay, we get something in there. All right, since you have the microphones, I'm going to start. I'll start with you. You know, you're in private business, you're doing good. What makes you move from business to a nonprofit?
Well, Bart and I had been involved at AND1 for 13 years, and Andrew was an early investor in that. And that time came to an end. We sold our business. Andrew was ready for a transition from various spots on Wall Street. And the thing that we all arrived at roughly the same time was how can we be of most service? And it wasn't preordained that it was going to be a nonprofit or a for-profit, just how can we be of most service? And among all the investors and all the entrepreneurs and policymakers and thought leaders that we met, as we were going through this discernment process, we all arrived at the same conclusion that business is this incredibly powerful latent force that could be used for a higher purpose than just maximizing wealth, and how could we be a part of that? And then it was a few more years of discernment and sort of working out exactly how that would show up in the world. But it was just the fact that we sold our business at the same time. Andrew was ready for a shift in his career from first career to second career, and the realization that a business could be used as a powerful force for good.
But Andrew, when we do our seminars, you read Milton Friedman, and it says the purpose of a corporation is simply to maximize profit and profit growth. Why is that incorrect?
Well, I think we see the results of that, we might say, overshoot. So Milton Friedman was trying to, at the time, maybe correct for what he saw as lots of problems in corporate culture and entrenched corporate management. And so he came up with this maxim that was about trying to address that problem. And I think the problem was that so many other people leapt on that bandwagon and changed the culture of business over time to be skewed totally towards that idea that there was really no other purpose to business than making money. What I think has become clear over the last 20 years or so is that as businesses have skewed towards trying to maximize value for their shareholders only, we see them creating more and externalizing more and more costs on society. And we are left with a bunch of big societal problems. Wages that continue to go down instead of go up, environmental degradation, lots of inequality, and those things result from that maxim that has gotten sort of stuck as a cultural meme. And we see a huge population of people, whether as investors, as consumers, as workers, as entrepreneurs, who want to do business a different way. That's not the purpose of business for them.
Keith Berwick and Peter Reiling have always used the phrase moving from success to significance as part of what the Crown program does and the seminars do. To what extent did the Crown program help inform what you all are doing?
You know, from the very first session of the Crown Fellowship, it was clear that a values-based approach to leadership was what I personally sought, and I think we would all share that learning. And what's been remarkable, Walter, is not only was the actual experience in the seminars so pivotal for the three of us, but the incredible support we've had from the AGLN through the last 10 years of B-Lab. You know, there are over 30 members of the AGLN that have either run B corporations, invested in B corporations, helped to pass the legislation to create a new corporate form. It really has been a remarkable journey for us to have so much support from an incredibly talented crew. Explain exactly what criteria you use and how do you pick that criteria?
Sure. So at a simple level, like you can think of a B corporation as like fair trade, but for the whole company, not just a bag of coffee, or like a LEED building, a LEED certification, but not just for the building, but for the whole business. And so a B corporation meets the most rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, transparency, and accountability. The accountability is the legal piece that Bart and Andrew were talking about, where the fiduciary duty of the directors of the corporation are expanded so that they're required to consider the impact of their decisions on all of their stakeholders, not just on their shareholders. And then the performance standards look at worker practices, customer impact, supply chain impact, community impact, and environmental impact. And you look at the whole total, the sum total of all of that impact, and if it's met a minimum threshold without prescribing exactly how any individual company does that, then they're eligible for certification if they meet those performance standards, are transparent about them, and then also change the legal DNA of the business so that the interests of business are aligned with the interests of society, not just in a nice mission statement on the wall, but in the actual governing documents that inform how those corner office and boardroom conversations take place.
But how, is it subjective, or do you say you've got to do this much with your carbon footprint? You got to do this much?
Right, so great question. And so, no, it's not subjective, but it's also not prescriptive. And so there's a tool called the B Impact Assessment, which has between 100 and 200 different questions depending upon the size of your business, the industry where you're located. And it asks you questions about comp and benefits and worker ownership and toxins and water and waste that go into your product, or carbon that comes out of your product, the community impact of your supply chain, et cetera. And the sum total of your answers to all those questions have to equal a minimum score of 80 out of a total of 200 available points. But you can choose to do any of those things or choose not to do any of those things. The only thing that we're making a judgment about is that the sum total of that has to reach a minimum bar to be worthy of our organization shining a light on you as a leader of this broad global movement of people using business as a force for good. But we're not saying you must be carbon neutral or you must hire, red-headed lefties from Brooklyn. Like, you choose how you want to have
Both
your impact.
lefties?
No.
Okay, you're a lefty. I can tell with the microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Bart said a moment ago, Andrew, about how you have a new form of corporation, one that's even recognized in law and the tax code, perhaps. Somewhat what the Aspen Institute does, we often bring people together on things. We've just started a program at the Aspen Institute inspired by Mark Warner, the senator. I think I can say that Mitch Daniels will be the co-chair, even though it hasn't been announced, in the usual bipartisan way we do things. And people like Bruce Reed, John Bridgeland, and others are working on it. And it's to create a new place in the tax code for responsible corporations. I know you all are meeting with Senator Warner and some of the team on Monday. How does that all fit into this?
Well, I think one thing we are seeing is more and more policymakers wanting to figure out how they can embrace these ideas and try to create more incentives for companies to do something good. And so the example that you're talking about with Senator Warner is one of those. We also see a lot of that at the state and municipal level. But that's had to start really with a couple of key underlying pieces of market infrastructure. One is that you actually need a corporate form that creates the certainty and the accountability that a company actually will maintain its commitments as it scales, will maintain its social and environmental commitments. And so that's what that legislation has been all about, is creating a new corporate form in 31 states, most importantly, Delaware. And the second thing has been, is about addressing investors' fiduciary duties. So it's one thing for companies to say, oh, we'd like to behave differently, but if no one will put capital into those companies, they won't be able to scale. And so it's also been very important to address things like ERISA, which is the set of laws that guides how pension funds invest in the public markets. And another AGLN fellow, Tom Perez, who's the Secretary of Labor, recently changed the ERISA guidance that now makes it possible for big institutional investors to invest in companies like b-corps.
Mm-hmm. Do you worry that of having government start making the criteria, though, where they might say, who knows what a different, governments might do?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of risk in that. And one of the things that we have tended to do is try to make sure that we're helping to create the underlying infrastructure, like that corporate form, and those really high quality and comprehensive standards so that people can look at the impact of a whole business, not just whether it's doing one thing great while doing a bunch of other things badly. And then allow policymakers to use those tools. But I think we've tried to maintain a less active role in the policy front because we also don't want to end up in a partisan place. This is a movement. The B Corp movement has really managed to, I think, embrace people across the political spectrum.
Right. Just to be concrete, the 30 states plus Delaware that passed that corporate form legislation were passed in as many red states as blue states. And there were actually 25 unanimous floor votes. So not just like bipartisan support, but actual unanimity at a time of incredible fractious political divide around the common idea that we can use business as a force for good, use market-based solutions to solve social and environmental problems. And the notion of incentives is more of a third rail than creating a new freedom of choice for people to opt into a new structure. And so we are loath at B-Lab to come out in favor of incentives, but are more inclined to say, here's the basic market infrastructure around expanded fiduciary duty and transparent, credible comprehensive standards, and then policymakers, effectively the marketplace, can figure out if and how to use those to whatever policy objectives the policymakers have. But that's not our role.
I notice most of your companies tend to be small startups. Are you trying to get them while they're young, and do you worry that when an Honest Tea gets bought by Nestle, or when a Ben & Jerry's gets bought by whoever they were bought by, that when they get part of the big corporate structure, it's harder for this to work?
Yeah, a great question. Importantly, part of the reason we created the certification in the corporate form was to allow a company to actually transition into a multinational and be able to maintain its values during that transition. Because we've changed the corporate governance of the company, they have different options at that moment of sale. The truth is, without this change, one of the great challenges of maintaining a mission-driven company is at the moment of liquidity, you have no option to consider anything other than maximizing shareholder value. And if you can make this legal change, it's given you the opportunity to move into an acquisition with the ability to hold on to mission long term. Examples include, an AGLN new Crown Fellow, Neil Grimmer, who ran Plum Organics and was bought by Campbell Soup, maintained his certification, became one of the first benefit corps in Delaware. Another example is Adam Lowry. Adam sold his company Method Home Products to Ecovair, maintained his certification, and is in the process of trying to create an opportunity for Ecovair to be a certified B Corp both here in the U.S. and in Europe. Importantly, Walter, though, on top of that, there's been an increasing interest from larger corporations over the course of the last, call it, year. We began with small and medium-sized enterprises for two reasons. One, innovation is happening there first and most aggressively. Secondly, that legal change, rewriting your articles so that you're considering all stakeholders, really hard to do once you've gone public, right? Not impossible, but difficult without some trailblazing pioneers who are first going to take this leap. We've had two significant events in the last year. One, a company called Natura Cosmetics down in Brazil is a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company. They joined the community, and they did the legal change even though they were a public company, and they had a 100% vote from all of their shareholders to rewrite their articles to consider all stakeholders. Secondly, a lot of you might know Etsy is a company that sells, it's kind of like the righteous Amazon. It's an easy way to think of Etsy. Etsy went public as a certified B Corp. And the combination of those two events, and most of the press around Etsy's IPO was really focused on their certification as the first company of scale to go public as a certified B Corporation, has created interest from dozens of multinationals interested in engaging in our community. And so we're just beginning a process for the next 24 months to create a multinational and public market advisory council to try to determine a path that is both meaningful, where we uphold the credibility and rigor and integrity of the certification, but also manageable. Because the truth is, we've had wonderful support from somebody like Paul Pullman from Unilever, who has said, my North Star is to be a certified B Corp. But we also recognize the process right now is not built for the largest consumer product company on the globe. And so we need to figure out, with his help and with another couple of dozen leaders, on how to create a process that works for them so that they can too join this movement.
President Obama had a pretty small dinner, I think last Thursday, a week ago, on this very issue, on responsibility corporations and how to do it. Do you think this is going to be a major political thrust over the next 10 years as people, from the presidents to the Pope, confront the questions of capitalism and how to make capitalism sustainable? Okay.
So I think, like most often, politics trails, politics is a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator of change. And so I don't think the leadership is going to come from a political pull for this. I think what will happen is that's a big parade. I'd like to stand in front of that parade. And so we'll have an increasing number of politicians from every side of the aisle wanting to stand with a growing community of business leaders that are using market forces to solve social and environmental problems and doing it at scale. And we're going to find them finding ways, looking for ways to join forces with those private sector leaders to create the change.
but I think the change is going to come from the business leaders, the investors, the consumers, and honestly, something that isn't talked about as much, but the workforce. 50% of the world's workforce are millennials. And those millennials may be among the biggest sort of cultural change agents that the world has ever seen, because they are demanding more than just a paycheck. They're demanding a purpose. And with their investment dollars, as they stand to inherit about $30 trillion over the next 20 years, that's the largest wealth transfer in the history of humanity. And when this new intention shows up in the marketplace, not just as consumers, but as workers and as investors, the marketplace will shift to take advantage of that market opportunity, which is to deliver not only positive returns, but positive impact, and impact that's measurable.
I'll end with something based on what you just said, a question based on that, which is Judy Samuelson and the other people who work at Aspen's Business and Society program sort of have a two-pronged approach about long-term thinking, responsible corporate citizenship. One is that they say corporations should do it because it's the right thing to do. Another argument they make is they should do it because it'll be in their own benefit. The doing well by doing good argument, that you'll attract better workers, that millennials will want to work for you, that in the end it'll help your bottom line to do good. Is it a combination of both of these? And what's the why here? Why are we doing this?
The answer is it's both. And what makes this such a powerful moment for a transition in the way people think about capitalism and evolution of capitalism is a confluence of interests, I think, between more and more people who want to use business as a force for good because it's the right thing to do, because they want meaning or purpose as consumers or as investors or as workers or as entrepreneurs. And at the same time, a group of people who may not have the same set of ends in mind, but recognize more and more that it is the companies that actually have those good practices that are going to create more value for their shareholders. And so that's why you see at the same time big institutions like BlackRock talking about b-corps, because they recognize that these are the kinds of businesses that are going to create long-term value for their institutional shareholders. And so I think the power of this movement is about the confluence of those interests all happening at the same time.
Final words? Any you want to add to that, Jay or Ben?
I never tried to upstage Andrew. That's a bad strategy.
Yeah, bad strategy ever since college. Congratulations. Thank you all very much.